Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. So today I've decided to go ahead and start another series on one of my books. I haven't shared a whole lot about this book. I did do an intro to it some time ago, one podcast on it, kind of an overview. But it's my book. A lot of people don't even know I've written a book for sales. But don't turn off the podcast yet if you're not in sales. Listen for a few minutes first, because you're going to understand what I'm going to teach you throughout this series applies to everyone. But if you are in sales, you really need to listen. Or if you think you ever want to be in sales, or if you're a leader of an organization and people in your company are in sales and you're responsible for those people, for their results or development. So the title of this book is Who's Buying You? Subtitle, Until You Sell Yourself, You Won't Sell Much. And that subtitle, actually the title and the subtitle, Who's Buying You? Until You Sell Yourself, You Won't Sell Much. That title alone is why this book applies to everyone. I'm not a sales professional in a normal context, but I've been selling myself my whole life, especially when I started my own business. But I've been selling people on process improvement. I logged 11,000 hours between 2005 and 2008, selling people on process improvement and change, organizational change, continuous improvement, cultural transformation. And I'm still selling people on, really now I'm selling them on developing themselves, and I'm selling people on developing others. So that's what I want you to take away. I'm gonna talk about this book in the context, just looking in the mirror at selling yourself in different situations. But it's also the intended audience is literally someone who is a sales professional, meaning they've got to sell something to make a living, whether they're getting paid by the hour, whether they on straight commission, or some combination of the two. And I'll tell you where this will not work right off the bat. Anywhere you've got to follow a sales script, it ain't gonna work. Anybody who wants you to follow a sales script, they ain't gonna like me or my book. I'm gonna tell you that. I already know it. But if you work somewhere and you are in sales and you do have to follow a sales script, you may need to listen to this book more than anybody else. Especially later on, I'm gonna have a chapter, a whole podcast episode. It'll be actually part 10 of 30, chapter 10. This book also has 30 chapters, 3 pages each. But chapter 10 is Don't Be a Sales Puppet. If someone's got you following a sales script, they got to train you to it. You got to learn it word for word. You got to be able to deliver that thing like you're an actor. They don't have your best interest at heart. You can keep working there if you want to, but you probably already look around. They probably got a revolving door of salespeople, because people can't be effective, or they get tired of it, or they don't like it, or they can't sell. A lot of times they can't sell because it's scripted, because they're like a sales puppet. People like buying from authentic people. But anyway, I hope if you're a regular listener and you're listening for personal growth, leadership development, content, that sort of stuff, even though this book is intended for a professional salesperson, I really hope you continue to listen to all these episodes, because they're going to sound the same as all my other episodes. They're just going to have a slight focus on selling. But see, I'm not going to help someone learn how to sell a product. Somebody else got to teach them that. I'm going to help anybody who's listening to this series, this 30-part series, and we won't end it until, it'll last until probably May or so. Somewhere in there, I'll be on this series. But there's some good stuff in here. Again, there's good stuff for you if you never plan on selling anything professionally. There's some good stuff in here for you. But even regular folks who have regular jobs who are not professional salespeople, they selling stuff all the time. But again, this book is to help you sell yourself. What are you doing when you go to apply for a job? Guess what you got to sell? Yourself. You are the product. Your character and your competency. That's what you're selling. Whoever does the best job at selling, guess who's going to get the job? So I hope you stick with me through this series. And if you know people who actually are in sales, especially if they're your family members or if they were to be your children or grandchildren, get them a copy of this book. Get them tuned into this podcast. Podcast free. Book's going to cost you $18. That's like nothing for what it can do. I know some folks who've used what's in this book, and I'm one of them. I mean, I wrote the book, and I actually wrote it for Rhea and I were invited to speak for a group of real estate agents. Actually, it was Exit Realty. I don't remember. It's been quite a while ago. It was before COVID. I remember that. I don't really remember. Actually, I can look in the book. Just hang on with me one second. So looks like it was 2017. That's when the copyright is. So it was 2017, and they wanted us to speak, and we were going to speak, and we had some time. And if you guys listened to my episode not too long ago, where I told you how I write a book in 7 days, I did that with this book. And they wanted us to speak, and I said, I can write a book on all the kind of stuff I talk about and put it in the context of selling. And then they did the book deal where they did our special offer where they purchased books, and we went and spoke. So we spoke to all of the Alabama Exit Realty people, and then they had us back, and we went to Mississippi and spoke to all of the real estate agents from the state of Mississippi. So we did 2 different talks. They all got this book. And again, that was back in 2017. But that's why I even have the book to start with. We had an opportunity to speak for a real estate company, people in the professional sales business. And I was like, I'll write a book specifically for them. But a lot of people don't even know I have it, even though it's on my website. You can go to bluecollarleadership.com/download and read the first 5 chapters and see the outline. It's on audio. It's in an ebook. It's a paperback. So lots of places you can get it. If you are in sales, a lot of salespeople like to download the audio book, listen to that. But you figure out what works for you. But I hope you listen, because if you've been listening to me long, you know I teach principles. You're going to hear some of the same exact principles you've heard before, and you're going to hear a lot of new ones. But you're going to hear it in the context of selling. So it changes everything. You can talk about, like I could write the same kind of book, same kind of thing, and talk about communication. Or like we have a book, and Rhea has a book on communication. Or we can talk about leadership influence relative to change. And we got a book on that. Change Happens. Rhea's book is Straight Talk, Power of Effective Communication. The principles of influence, they're like gravity. They apply everywhere. So this one is all about selling yourself. And see, one company, Element Designs, their CEO and VP decided to take their entire national sales team through a book study on this book. Actually, they're still going through it. I join them on I think it's the first Tuesday of the month. On a Tuesday night, they all get on by Zoom from wherever they're at, and they cover several chapters. I get on and listen to them, discuss it, and talk and share some thoughts with them. And it's pretty cool to see them doing that. If you are a sales leader or owner of a company and you got people who's selling your product, check out that book, listen to this podcast, get them listening to the podcast. But I highly recommend you to lead them through a book study. And I teach you how to do that on episode 305. But it'll increase their sales. It'll help them build relationships, create positive word of mouth for your organization, that sort of stuff. So let's go ahead and get into chapter 1. And if you're a regular listener, it's going to sound familiar because it's a principle, again, like gravity. But what context? Oh, actually, before I get into chapter 1, I just want to share what's on the back cover. I got a quote on the back cover from Jeffrey Gitomer. He says, the first thing prospects buy is the salesperson. The first sale made is you. And remember the title of this book, Who's Buying You? Until you sell yourself, you won't sell much. Kind of the same thing he's saying there, but different. And you got to understand, these days, you used to hear, if you're old enough, you used to hear a lot about buyer beware. But it's no longer buyer beware. It hadn't been buyer beware for pretty much since they invented smartphones and people figured out how to use them. And the internet even before that. But smartphones really changed the game. But it's no longer buyer beware. Today it's seller beware. And I'm going to talk to you about, what that means. But today the buyer has the advantage over the seller. Most often they're holding it in their hand. It's a smartphone, like I was just saying. They can learn everything about your product before they meet you. They can compare features and prices instantly, maybe while they're even standing in front of you. And if you're not a salesperson, guess what you are? You're a buyer. So you've had to deal with a lot of salespeople. You're an expert about salespeople just like I am, if you understand leadership and influence, the principles of leadership and influence. But the major advantage, if you're in professional sales, the major advantage you do still have is you. But see, that's a principle. That's the advantage you have no matter what. If you're trying to apply for a job or if you're trying to sell your car in your front yard, it doesn't make any difference. These things, you're going to sell things in your life, and number one thing you got to sell is you. But the major advantage you still have over anybody else is you. You are the advantage, or you're going to be the disadvantage in every case. So hopefully just this little talk right here can help you understand why this 30-part series is going to be valuable to anybody, whether you're in sales professionally or not. But again, the major advantage you still have in spite of smartphones is you. If they like you, if they trust you, if they feel you want to help them. See, you can understand, I'm talking to you about a sales book, but I could have said that on any podcast, talking to anybody, anywhere, and that's still the truth. Because it's all about building relationships, building trust, increasing your influence, all the stuff I always talk about, right? So hang in there with me. You're going to learn some good stuff. Hopefully you'll like these episodes, and it's a different spin than some of the other books I've been talking to you about. So if you're a regular listener, maybe it'll be a little refreshing context. But this book's, again, filled with 30 chapters, 3 pages each, and it provides unique insights that will ensure your advantage, not over the buyer, because if you got a high degree of character, you ain't trying to take advantage of the buyer. But it is going to ensure your advantage, not over the buyer, but over your competition. Who is that? Those who are selling what you're selling. And it'll help you sell yourself. That's the advantage. This book is about character-based selling. How to sell with a high degree of character. So you can get short-term sales, long-term sales, referrals, good positive word-of-mouth advertisement, all this stuff that anybody would want. But salespeople, their paycheck's dependent on it. But everybody else, your promotions, your salary, your life, everything you're dealing with is dependent on it too. So let's talk about chapter 1. Chapter 1 is the foundation of selling. Makes sense. That should be chapter 1, right? So the foundation of selling, the subtitle is, when you increase your influence, you will increase your sales. When you increase your influence, you will increase your sales. Common sense, right? Well, when you increase your influence, you're also going to increase your opportunity to get promotions and all that sort of stuff. But I want to share with you right off the bat here a quote from Jim Rohn. And he says this. You might have heard me say it before, but it really, really fits in this book. He says, if you work hard on your job, you can make a living. But if you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. Especially if you in sales, you work hard on becoming a character-based salesperson. where you got the advantage over all the other people selling what you're selling because of who you are, that's a big deal. So influence, if you ain't figured it out yet, is the foundation of selling. That's what salespeople are doing. They're trying to influence. And I should say influence is the foundation of character-based selling. Because if somebody's just trying to take advantage of you, manipulation might be the foundation of that type of selling, but that ain't the kind of selling I'm talking to you about. I'm assuming you want to sell with a high degree of character. I assume you want to be the kind of salesperson. If you're a man, I'm assuming the context of this book is if you had a daughter speaking to a salesman on a car lot or anywhere else, whatever they're buying, your daughter, your mother, your wife, what kind of person would you want selling to them? If you're not around, you get hit by a truck tomorrow, you're not around, now they're on their own. What kind of person would you want selling to them? That's what this book is about, help you become that kind of person. Because people are going to refer that kind of person. They're going to buy from that kind of person. That kind of person's going to have a good life as a salesperson. They got to get in the right organization with the right boss or either start their own business. Just like everybody else who values this type of content. It's a struggle to find the right fit. But you got to be the right person before you're going to be the right fit for those kind of people. That's what this book is, to help you move toward that. But if you have enough influence, you'll get to sell. If you don't, you won't. If you got enough influence, you'll get referrals. If you don't, you won't. If you have enough influence, you'll get repeat customers. If you don't, you won't. Pretty simple, right? Bob Burg had this to say. He said, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And I've heard that at so many conferences, but it's true. I've heard so many people quote Bob Burg right there. But everything in sales rises and falls on influence. And manipulation is a low grade of influence. It's on the negative side of the chart. But manipulation is still influence. It's just bad influence. If you've ever been manipulated by a salesperson, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But with influence, you will thrive. Without it, you'll take a dive. Whether you're a sales professional or anybody else in life, you want more influence because life's going to be better with more influence. But when someone buys from you, personally, you have successfully influenced them to make two purchases. A lot of people miss that. They think they just sold the product. That ain't the way it is. When someone buys from you, they've made two purchases. The first thing they bought was you. They bought into you. Who are you? And then they buy the product or service from you. A lot of people miss that. And the context of this book also in reference to sales is also, if you're standing at a counter and somebody's just walking up, like you at a fast food restaurant, give me a cheeseburger and a Coke and some fries, you ain't going to get a lot out of this book because you really ain't got to do much selling. You just basically taking money and taking an order, and you ain't really selling the product at the counter. It's kind of selling itself. You can take some of these tips and get better at that, but what you actually can do is take these tips and sell yourself better to these people. So if that's what you're doing and that ain't what you want to do the rest of your life, you're going to be able to climb the ladder of life, the ladder of influence. And remember, Rhea, my wife's got a book by that title, The Ladder of Influence. You might want to check that out. But this book's meant to motivate and inspire you to work hard on yourself. And as a result, you're going to increase positive influence in all situations and with everyone. But if you're in a sales job where you got to go out and sell, you got to go out and find prospects, or if you're doing that, you need to get this book so you're getting referrals, Because if you're in the sales profession, it's a whole lot easier to sell when you're getting referrals than when you're out chasing cold calling and all that kind of stuff. I don't care nothing about that. I like referrals. I like to answer my phone, answer emails, and get some business. I don't cold call. I don't do all that stuff. I do what I teach you in this book. It works fine for me. And everybody I know who's adopted this, it works fine for them too. And there's people out there who are killing it, who ain't never read this book, but they could have wrote this book. Probably even a better book than I wrote. But maybe they ain't ever thought about it or never did it or don't have a desire to do it. But they're following these principles. So if you work hard on yourself, you're going to increase your positive influence in all situations and with everyone, as I mentioned. And if you do that, your fortune is going to follow, like Jim Rohn said. And if you don't do this, what I'm teaching you in this book, someone else will. And they're going to enjoy your piece of the sales pie. The old saying, if you snooze, you lose, I think it fits pretty good in the sales world especially. But it's the same way in all of life. I can't hardly talk about this book just in the sales context, although that's what I'm trying to do. I see it in every aspect of life. But influence is what I'm passionate about. If you know me, you already know that. So I'm gonna be, I'll begin by sharing with you what truly qualifies me to write this little book on sales. Everything I read about, write about, think about, speak about relates to principles of character-based positive influence. And as it applies to sales, it's all about integrity and character-based selling, as I mentioned earlier. And if you're new to this podcast, you need to know I define leadership the same way as John Maxwell. Leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. That's what John says. I agree 100%. So when I say the foundation of selling is influence, the synonym is leadership. They're the same thing. So in 2008, if you don't know my backstory, I'm getting new listeners all the time. We speak all over the place, and people get turned on to my podcast. So some of you been around from the beginning, listened to all 350-something episodes. Some of you, this is your first one. But in 2008, I committed to becoming a lifetime student of character-based positive influence. Been reading every day since 2008, this type of content. Written 15 of my own books now. Together, Rhea and I have 34 books. 6 of those are her motivational and planning journals. If you're into journaling, go to rheastory.com, check out her store and her books, and check out those journals. But I want to help you achieve amazing results. But you got to do the hard work on yourself, as Jim Rohn stated. I can't do that for you. I want to help you achieve amazing results. All I can do is motivate and inspire you to go do the work. But we're about to start. We've already started. This is part 1 of 30 in this series based on the content in this book. I'm not reading it word for word. Some of it is, some of it ain't. I'm getting quotes from it. I'm freestyling like I always do, putting in a lot of stuff. But mainly I'm talking about different points in the book and then sharing stories to go along with it. But my overall intent with this 30-part series is to help you learn to use who you are to leverage what you know. And again, that applies in all of life, but I'm talking about to the professional salesperson. Especially, I want to help you use who you are to leverage what you know. And if you're struggling in sales, you need to be more. And that's what this book is, to help you be more. If you're already killing it, it's just going to sharpen you. If you're struggling, it's going to really sharpen you. But remember, you don't have to be sick to get better, as Michael Josephson says. And I don't consider myself a sales professional, but I am an influence professional. In my terms, I'm a leadership professional. But it's all the same, every bit of it. I've become an expert in selling my most important product, me. When you look in the mirror, that's the most important thing you got to sell is you. Because we're all selling something. The first and most important thing we must sell is us. I got to sell me. You got to sell you. If we competing, I want to be the advantage. And sure, you want to be the advantage. But whoever's done the most work on themselves, they're going to win. And you got to have your competency too. And I got a chapter where I talk about that, at least one. But I ain't here to teach you competency. You got to learn that somewhere else. I'm here to talk about character development. And you must develop your competency. But that's only a small part of the equation. And I want to kind of relate that to you here in a Napoleon Hill quote that I actually got in the book. Napoleon Hill said this. He said the average person who wanted to get an education would probably think first of some college or university, with the false belief that these institutions could educate their students. He goes on to say, don't believe for a moment that you can buy an education for money. You can't do it. An education is something you have to work for. Furthermore, he says, it cannot be acquired in the usual 4 years given over to college training. If we are students, we are going to school always. We never get through. Life is one continuous school. And the kind of students we are depends upon the kind of work we do as we go through this great university. That's some good stuff right there. That's a good quote from Napoleon Hill. You might need to rewind it, play it again. That's why I say I'm a lifetime student of leadership. You ain't never going to learn it all. And there's somebody always coming for whatever it is you want. So you better be working on yourself. A 4-year degree may take you to the base of the mountain of success, but it'll take a lifetime of growth and development to get you to the top. And you can get to the top without a 4-year degree because you're going to have a 40-year degree. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm working on. You listen to this podcast, hopefully that's what you're working on. Constant and continual growth. You go up against somebody who don't do anything, they don't stand a chance. But that assumes you're applying all this stuff you're learning. You can't just listen and say, oh, like I say, I've been reading every day for 15 years. If that's all I've been doing, wouldn't nothing be changed in my life. But I've been applying every day also for 15 years, what I've been learning. So if you're not yet a student of leadership, remember that word also is a synonym for influence, which is the foundation of selling. I hope after you go through this series, or I really hope you get the book, follow along, and read a chapter in the book, listen to a podcast episode. But you got to wait till May now. I won't finish this series until May. So if you really like this and you're gung-ho, make sure you get that book, paperback, audio, ebook, start diving in. But leadership is influence, and influence sells. So at the end of each chapter in the book, I've got a little seller beware section with three different little quotes. So I'm going to share them in every one of the series in this podcast. So here, seller beware. Number 1, you must increase your influence in order to increase your sales. More influence leads to more options. Number 2, you must intentionally work hard on yourself, not your job, to reach your full potential. Be more. And number 3, your competency will take you part of the way, but it's your character that will take you all of the way. So I hope you enjoyed part 1 of this series, and I hope you stick around. Hope you don't leave me if you're a regular listener. You're gonna get some value out of this. Like I said earlier on, you're gonna sell stuff in your life. You may sell your house, you may sell your car, you may sell all kind of stuff. You may be on Marketplace on Facebook, make a living off of that. Plenty of people do. But at a minimum, you're gonna be selling yourself. And again, if you know people who are in sales, you might want to direct them toward this book and toward this podcast series. Keep climbing. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.